welcome to the third week and episode of Schrodinger's podcast.
Meow, 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 meow.
All right. Silence. All right, who hissed?
Not I. Not I, says the kitty.
Oh, that means it was one of the dudes. We'll never know. All right, so this week we have 4 different topics we're going to cover, and you don't get to know until they come up. So we're going to go with the first one. The first one is actually related to a discussion Larken and I were having earlier today, and it actually got started because we were talking about a particular topic in the movement that comes up on occasion, and it annoys me for several reasons. And it annoys a lot of people for several reasons, and I'll let Larken decide if he wants to mention it. But it led to another point, a grander point, as our discussions often do. And Larken was talking about the concept of understanding versus believing, and how he's noticed that even among anarchists who have figured out this thing about liberty related to, what actual human freedom looks like, a lot of anarchists still do the old thing they used to do before of sort of believing something because it sounds better than what they knew before. So now it's sort of like they're ready to believe almost anything that's different from whatever it is they thought was reality at first. And they don't necessarily apply logic or reasoning to the new thing. They sort of just go, well, since the state was a lie and I figured out that was a lie, maybe there's other things that are a lie. And instead of applying a logical approach to what they're looking at, they tend to go along with, well, that just sounds different and anti what I knew before. I'll believe that now. And they don't understand how to go about determining something for yourself without trusting the word of others either way, whether it's an alternative narrative or a current narrative. So that's topic number 1. But first, I neglected to introduce everybody. We have on this call myself, Amanda Rachwitz, the Dragon Anarchist. We have Larken Rose, my love, and awesome author of The Most Dangerous Superstition and 3 other books. And we have Lauren Rumpler, who did the documentary The Voice of Resistance, which is her pride and joy. If you don't know about that or haven't seen it, check it out. And she's here. She led the first episode of Schrodinger's podcast. And it's my turn to lead this week. And we'll be hearing from her. And we are also going to have on this podcast one Mr. Jeff Berwick, who does Anarchast and is also known for several other things. The guy who runs the Dollar Vigilante and likes to talk a lot about cryptocurrencies and other things related to the black market. So we're going to hear from all of these people on this episode. And I want to start off by, that's right. Lauren pointed out that Jeff Berwick also is the person who founded the whole Anarchapulco, largest anarchist conference event in the world right now, event that goes on every year in February. And
I've been to every one.
And Lauren's been to every one. I went to 2016 and 2017. Larken has also been to 2016 and 2017. So I'm going to go back to that topic of understanding versus believing. And I'm going to go ahead and let Larken decide what he wants to say about that and what he wants other people in the movement to think about.
Yeah, well, the concept came up today. There's so many contexts in which it comes up. And as the son of a science teacher, it may sort of be genetically passed on that it annoys me how few people understand almost anything about what they talk about, and how many people they think what they think because they believe it. And it's true of most people in most subjects most of the time. I'm sure it's true of me in a whole lot of subjects too. But if you look at conspiracy theories is one example. Now, I know there's plenty of historical evidence of governments committing conspiracies all over the place, But when people decide which conspiracies to believe in, too many people seem to be just sort of arbitrarily deciding what to believe instead of looking at actual evidence and looking at logic of, does it actually make sense for this to be the case? And so it's sort of, I think the American education system and just the culture in general makes so many people just sort of pick and choose what to take on faith without really understanding any of it. And it's sort of like a lot of times they'll pick and choose something that happens to be true, but it's just sort of blind luck, whether that happens or not, or whether they pick and choose something that's not true. And it's just, it's frustrating to try to have actual rational discussions with people who don't start at all objective, and they don't reach their conclusions based on, evidence and logic, and they sort of don't have a foundation of what they're talking about. And unfortunately, it's true of people in general, which means it's also true of lots of anarchists, and it's true of almost anybody in lots of different fields. And it's frustrating because, and I don't think this is new. It sort of seems new to me. But once upon a time, I think there may have been a comedian who talked about this. Once upon a time, I sort of got the impression that if people didn't know anything about a subject, they would keep to themselves about it. And in the culture of everybody's opinion is equally valid, people now, I guess it's a good thing that people dare to say what they think, but they also tend to think that their opinions are valid just because they're opinions. They don't actually have to be based on anything or understand anything or anything like that. And so many things, it feels like to have a rational discussion, you sort of have to all the way go back to step one and start explaining things from the ground up. And so few belief systems and conclusions and opinions that people have seem to be based on anything other than just sort of picking and choosing what feels good, and that isn't really the way to determine truth. And the downside, the thing that Amanda and I were talking about is when something just gets intellectual and it's just sort of a scientific argument, that a lot of people don't respond well to that, because they feel alienated or they get defensive or whatever. And so, for people into intellectual exercises, talking to a lot of the world can sort of be frustrating if they don't bother with those foundations and things, but instead just sort of pick and choose what to take on faith.
What's really funny? I actually, I agree with you, and yet I disagree with you at the same time.
You're allowed to.
So you're allowed to. Thank you, King Larken, leader of the anarchist movement. So I actually think that opinions with people are actually on a bell curve. So I've decided that people who know absolutely nothing, like don't even understand what the words are that you're using on a topic, don't really have any opinion on the topic. But people who know just a little bit, but not enough to actually contribute to the topic, normally are just as vocal as people who know quite a bit on the topic.
Right.
And normally what they're adding comes from a place of they sound like they're speaking intelligently on the topic when when half of it is bullshit. Excuse my French. Why do we say that French? Anyway, another topic for another day. Why is that French? So, things that interest me. It's going to be one of those rabbit hole days for me. I can just see it. So, the last people, though, are, I think it curves right back down, though. The people that know, so much about a topic, to a certain point, they drop off and not say anything. They won't say anything. So a perfect example, I'm going to use myself as an example. When I really got to know objectivism, really, really got to know it, to the point where I could finally see its flaws, because it is actually a system that Unless you're completely BSing, it's actually very difficult to see the flaws until you really truly understand it. People will make stuff up all the time about it and why it's flawed, but most of it is complete BS. The flaws are really, really, really deeply philosophical, and you have to think pretty hard about it to actually come up with the proper flaws for it. But when people bring up objectivism to me and talk to me about objectivism, I normally try to move on from the topic as quickly as possible. Mainly because my concept and understanding of the topic is so deep that it's not even fun for me to discuss the topic anymore, because the only people I can discuss the topic with aren't normally present. So there's like very few people that I want to discuss objectivism with. And everyone else, I just try to move on. Normally, I move to Taoism, and I'm like, well, I'm not actually an objectivist now. I'm more of a Taoist. And then I want to talk about that for hours. And I know, I'm mid-range on that topic. Enough to feel like I can commit to it, but not enough to see the flaws. It's going to take me a few more years to actually fully understand it to the point, because I have a feeling it's a lot like objectivism. The flaws are so deep that you have to understand everything about it in order to see them. So, yeah, I honestly think that people wanting to communicate on a specific topic is actually in a bell curve. So that's what I think.
And I can totally think of an example. And it sounds... it may sound to some people sort of pompous when you say, oh, I know so much about it, I don't want to talk. But I totally relate, and it isn't about that. Like, when it comes to the tax code and all the fun stuff I went through with the extortion racket many years ago, and most people in the quote-unquote tax honesty movement have their pet theories that they heard somebody else say, and they'll pass them on and repeat them. And it's just exhausting, because it's like you're just repeating mythology that you heard from somewhere else and you've never actually looked. And just the thought of trying to start from ground zero and explain something that was built to be complicated and goes against what almost everybody thinks and says is just sort of exhausting. I don't even want to try. And it's, if somebody is like some master mechanic or somebody or something, and somebody else wants to argue which thing the engine is, I could see the master mechanic go, no. If we have to argue which is the engine, no, goodbye.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It just gets boring to talk to, I guess, what I would call normies, like dabblers. Actually, dabbler would be the perfect word for almost everybody that I talk to about objectivism. Almost everyone in the movement is a dabbler, because I mostly interact with anarchists, and most anarchists don't consider themselves to be objectivists. Amanda, I think you were mentioning something in the comments section that you wanted to expand on.
All I was going to say to add to that was just that, to point out the very specific thing of how I think in the information age, where people are used to being on the internet and getting so much of reality from a screen, they forget to ask themselves the important question of, is there a way I can prove whether or not something is objectively true or not true, for myself without outside input at all? Is there something I can directly, physically do? And a lot of people forget that direct experience of reality is the most superior way to learn about reality. The more that you're getting a report about reality from other people, the more you have to, that it's basically, there's a whole level of factors there that you have to consider when you're sifting through information, because you have to consider that went through another lens, and it went through someone else's personal biases, or it went through a medium, like, the internet is a medium, but it went through a video medium or a sound medium or something that can't have the experience be as though you were really there and saw it all and really felt it all. And then there's the fact that you can't be in other people's shoes in their hearts and minds. And there's that level of not all the way knowing the truth in any situation when it's all secondhand. So it's really important to, I think, it's not realistic to do this in every sense. We can't do it in every sense. But I think it's really important to consider, okay, is there a way for me to really figure this out without anyone's help, given what I already know, and prove it? And when we really make the effort to do that as much as possible, I think we actually get smarter, and we actually have proofs of truths that then nobody can take from us because we get the real deal. So that's what I was going to add. Lauren, you wanted to say one more thing, and then we can throw it to Jeff if he wants to comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny that you mentioned that, that deductive reasoning Sherlock Holmes concept of what do I know that can prove the things that I think. And I think that we spend a lot of time thinking about that. It's funny because every good philosophy that I've read has suggested against that type of use, mainly because the biases that can arise from that line of thinking, which is, I think this thing, what can I use to prove it? But instead, like, what proof is there in the world for me to form conclusions from? Like, what are the facts and what conclusions can I come from it? And I've tried to, I know I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. We can't help it. Because we've got to have made some decisions in order to have some kind of guiding moral compass in our life. So we've got to have thought about, what it is that we actually think, even if it's flawed, but at the same time being open to the world changing our opinions. And I think that's what you're getting at. But it's really funny because I actually mentioned that in my documentary, The Voice of Resistance, which is, when you're arguing with someone, if you must argue with someone, draw only from things as concrete as gravity. Not these ridiculous biases we get from books and philosophies. And I mean, I love philosophy as much as the next person, but every philosophy is flawed, and we need to keep that in our minds and be open to having our minds change throughout a conversation. So with that being said, I would really like to hear Jeff's opinion on this topic, and I think everybody would, mainly because he's interviewed so many people and watched so many people interact with truth over the years. So Jeff, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting that it took 20 minutes for me to say something on the show, but I guess that's what happens when you have 3 or 4 hosts. But
that's the point.
But when it comes to just trying to what people believe and trying to debate with them when they have absolutely no ability to think rationally or use logic, that's all been actually a part of a long-term plan to make people that way. It's been going on for centuries. The whole schooling system. Of course, what happens when the government's in charge of school? Everyone's an idiot, basically, and that's exactly what's happened. There's no logic course in your school. There's no rationality course. There's nothing to do with anything that you would ever use in real life and actually be useful to you. People go for 12 years of their government indoctrination camps, and they come out and they can barely even read or write. In today's day and age, where they're all texting anyway, which they learn on their own, on their phones anyway. So this is all planned, all designed, and that's what the world we live in today. And so many people believe in so many things that just aren't true, and they have no ability to even think about what is true or how to even figure out what is true or not, and they just take whatever they're told on the mainstream fake news media or from the schools, which is almost all garbage and lies and just wrong, and think that's true. And so we live amongst millions and millions of these people, so to have any sort of rational or debate with most of these people is just not possible. They have no idea what rationality is. They have no idea what logic is. They're just repeaters. And I think it was a CIA director in the 60s who said, our job will be complete when everything that every American believes isn't true. And that's totally the case today. If you talk to your average American about 9/11, they think it was some people in caves in Afghanistan and all this. Some fantastic, actually impossible concepts, like knocking down 3 buildings with 2 planes. Like, I don't care how good of a bowler you are, you can't do that. And for those buildings to fall at free fall speed, any architect or engineer, and there's thousands of them, have come out and said that's not even possible. That's not physically possible. But there is thousands and thousands of architects and engineers will tell you it is possible. That's how brainwashed and mind controlled people are, and how unable they are to actually think about things. And this goes towards everything. A lot of people think global warming is real. It's not real, but that's what they're told on TV. And who told you? Science. And there's a whole thing now called scientism. People act, it's a religion. I said just the other day, I think it's the second biggest religion on earth after statism right now is scientism. You talk to a lot of people and it's like, oh, we went to the moon, 50 years ago and played golf. Oh, really? How do you know that? I saw it on TV. And besides, it's science. It's like, well, that's not science. Seeing something on television isn't science. And they'll be like, evolution, that's just science. Well, where's the proof of it? And, Larken talked about this in Acapulco in just a side interview about evolution. Like, there's nothing scientific about evolution has been proven whatsoever. There's not one instance of a species turning into another species and having any evidence of that ever. But no, that's scientism now. So yeah, good luck having any debate with pretty much anyone nowadays. And we just pretty much have to live amongst the zombies and just try to figure out what to do and how to survive amongst them and how not to have them kill us or put us into cages or they're already extorting most of us for most of the money we make. So yeah, not to bring the big downer onto the show, but yeah, we basically live on a prison planet and we're surrounded by zombies. Those zombie movies are not fantasy. That is real.
Wow,
Yeah,
I was about to say that was super dark.
Yeah, that was. I agree, and the thing is, it was dark, but he's right. And Lauren, you said you wanted one more comment. I was going to let you comment, and then
that was it.
To the next topic.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
That was dark.
Okay.
Okay, I was going to throw in one quick thing. When I'm in nitpicky, annoying, like science teacher mode, I like to take the people who are actually agreeing with me on something and see if they can actually prove it or if they just took that on faith. Because if you happen to believe something that's right because you took it on faith, it's just blind luck that you took it on faith. So when somebody says, obviously this is true, I'll say, okay, I agree, but do you know how to actually demonstrate that? And even most of the people who know things that are true don't really know them. They believe them and they still can't argue why. They still can't explain why. They just, well, I heard it from somebody else. And that's just a flip of a coin, whether you heard something true or false. If you didn't bother to understand it yourself.
So true.
Yeah, I totally agree with. I agree with their method that you use of just trying to do that, because I've had to do that in myself. So I've had to look at something and go, okay, well, I really totally believe that, and I just agreed with somebody on that. But wait, have I really proven to myself that I can know that for sure, that I can prove that, or that's justified belief? Because if I have an assumption, I want to challenge it. So good topic. I really like. I mean, we could go for days on it, but I really like it, and I want to move on to the next one that's sort of related. I'm going to switch up our second and third topics, and I'm going to go to the next topic, which is our personal pet peeve of sort of topics that we think are that detract from the message of liberty or harmful to it, or are just sort of giant rabbit holes that we think maybe people get too focused on or too sucked into. And it doesn't have to be related to anything we were just talking about. It can be anything. But I'll go ahead and go first and say that one of mine that I think is something that's such a huge can of worms, and it detracts from the message, and it's a rabbit hole that can go on infinitely, is the issue of anything related to sexuality. I think that it's a great, separate, awesome philosophical and health discussion if you want to talk about that, but getting into falling down the rabbit holes and engaging people on trying to prove from the anarchist perspective how, sexuality should look, or how people should be, or what should be in an anarchist society, is kind of counterproductive to the whole message of liberty, which is none of us really know how to say how other people should live. We don't know how society should work. It's why we're anarchists. And that's such a complex and personal thing for so many people. It's so infinitely diverse among people that natural human freedom will just mean there's going to be lots of people of all different kinds and backgrounds. And the general rule of thumb is don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. If you see somebody obviously in front of you being harmed, or you find out directly of something where somebody's a victim, you know for sure they are a victim of something, do something about it. But other than that, the topic is, to me, something that should be left for, not related to the liberty message, not something liberty people connect to anarchy when they talk about it, or to freedom, because it's just this infinite can of worms, and there's so many emotions around it, from people talking about age of consent, to people talking about poly versus monogamy, to people talking about, how people dress, for crying out loud, and sexuality related to that. So that's my pet peeve. I think it's kind of a thing that's a giant rabbit hole, and it should be its own thing. People are free to discuss it, but I stay away from it. Lauren,
I personally find that's I personally find hearing, you see on Facebook all the time, and people talking about, well, in anarchy, how would this exactly work? Like, what would be the exact age of consent for sex and all this sort of stuff? It's like, there wouldn't be one. You do whatever you think is right in your community, and you find out what the consequences are. But everyone's so trained to think that there has to be some sort of big thing that has all the rules, that has this big rule book. People are so not used to, because they never have had to actually take personal responsibility in their own lives, that they're like, well, what would I do if my friend was like sexually molesting a 7-year-old daughter? It's like, I don't know. What would you do? And they're like, oh my God, like I'd have to actually do something? Yes, you would. And they're like, well, I don't like this.
I would have to stand up for my own beliefs? No way. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man.
Mental dependency thing of who's gonna tell me what I think about stuff.
I'm 100% with you, Jeff. Like 100%. And you, Amanda. So I mean, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know that I'm poly at this point. But there's like a difference, and I tried to explain this to other people that are poly and have tried to like integrate this into their message. It's not a message. It has nothing to do with anarchism whatsoever. It's just another ism, and it has no place. We need to stay on track and stay on message. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad we're doing this topic, because there are just like endless amounts of things that just annoyed the living shit out of me. I don't even know why. I mean, it's fun to discuss these things, and yeah, I'll go on shows and talk about poly all day, but at the end of the day, I'll always say this has nothing to do with liberty. Zero to do with liberty. It is all about, the only thing that matters in the whole world is that you respect other people's rights, and I'm not talking about whatever rights you think you have. Only negative rights. There are no positive rights. Negative rights being those that are granted to you as a human, not those that you think you have that are special. So you only have a right to not have things done to you. You don't have a right to things. So you have a right to not be killed. You have a right to not to be forced, etc., but you don't have a right to food. You don't have a right to shelter. And you also don't have a right to, you have a right to be who you are. And that applies to anybody and everyone. And that is the only message of liberty. And me being poly has nothing to do with you being monogamous. But honestly, my pet peeve is similar. I mean, it's very different, but it's a different topic. But it's this moral issue. I've really gotten annoyed with this new push for certain diets in the liberty movement. It drives me crazy. In fact, a couple of people that know me know I got into a very angry argument with somebody very close to me, and it was all caused by her diet. And she basically pushed me into veganism temporarily, and I'm obviously not going to tell you who it was, but it was very hurtful. It resulted in a humongous argument, almost completely ruined my trip to Mexico, and it was the stupidest argument. I had mentioned that I was looking forward to having some meat. I really wanted some, and she flipped out. Because I am what's apparently wrong with the world. And of course we we apologized and we came to a sense of, yes, maybe I should be more aware of animal cruelty rights, but I'm not going to stop eating meat. And she realized that maybe she was imposing her views on me. But I hear this repeatedly, that that I can't be an anarchist if I don't accept, the rights of animals, or I don't accept a certain type of diet or a certain way of life. That has nothing to do with human rights. The only rights that I need to discuss are human rights. Maybe I'm the only one here, but I really don't think that what is the word? Non-conscious beings have rights, like animals and plants. But maybe I'm alone in that. I don't know. That's
funny,
my
right?
personal pet peeve.
A lot of people will say a lot of these sort of things, and then they'll be like, "Yeah, I totally like whatever. You can't like yell at me because I'm eating cows or pigs or whatever." But then a lot of those same people will hear about in China, they're having a dog eating festival, and they'll freak out and they'll be like, "We got to bomb that country."
Oh no,
like,
I'm fine with that. That's fine.
It's like they're just picking their like everyone's they're just emotional. They don't know how to think. This goes back to my old point, right?
I agree entirely. Like so I think that we have a right to eat anything that is not able to think logically. So obviously humans are off the menu. So.
I don't know if I'd say you'd have a right. Like what right? There's no right. You can eat whatever you want, but you can do whatever you want, and you can see what happens if you do. Like for example, if you came over and started eating my dog, I'd kill you, right?
That's fair.
Right. That's fair. If you had a chicken coop in your place next door to mine and you're eating those chickens, I wouldn't do anything because that's fairly standard. I totally understand why a lot of people do that. I personally, I think the world would be much better if everyone was vegan, but I know that by yelling at people and doing stuff like that, it's not going to change it any quicker.
I like that reasoning, Jeff. You can try it and see how it turns out for you. I like that.
I'll go one step further. If your neighbor volunteered to let you make him into a casserole when he was dead,
casseroles again.
I wouldn't forcibly interfere with that either. I might kind of avoid you if you did such things, but it seems like so many of these pet peeves are sort of things that people want to tack on to the end of anarchism. Like they don't understand that anarchism is a lack of one belief. It's not like a complex positive description of how everything should be. All it says is let's not have a ruling class. And so many people just want to pile stuff on the end, like whatever their own preferences are. And I'm going to throw in another example, which is probably my biggest pet peeve, which is anarcho-communists. Which is people who, first of all, I think they're economically and philosophically massively confused, but they're basically saying, I don't want there to be a ruling class. And by the way, after there's no ruling class, here's how I want all of human economic interaction arranged. It's like, well, guess what? You don't get to decide how all of economic, human interaction is arranged. So sticking that on the end of it and then saying, well, this is what real anarchists believe. It's just totally arbitrary. And you're allowed to believe that, and you're allowed to have, discussions about economics and everything else. But whenever somebody tries to stick something on the end, it's like, I don't believe in a ruling class. And by the way, everybody should do this. Like those have nothing to do with each other. And it's like, if there was a word that means I don't believe in Santa Claus, but I'm not just a Santa Claus unbeliever. I'm a Santa Claus unbeliever who doesn't believe in eating meat. Like, what the hell is the connection? There's nothing there. It's a completely separate thing. And to try to mix the two just so you can think you're a better something or other doesn't make any sense. Like, they're two distinct things. Let's not have a ruling class. And then there's all this other stuff we can talk about and disagree about and debate about. But it's not relevant to that. And when people throw it in as if it's a requirement to being an anarchist, that you have to not eat meat, or you have to be a communist, or you have to have all whatever pet preferences or theories, it just doesn't make any sense.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out that we can talk about our different pet peeves. If anybody has another specific one they're thinking of. So if Jeff, you have one, or Larken, you have one that you can specifically think of that you want to mention before we wrap up the topic, then I want to hear that. But it's sort of like, I just thought of what you said, Larken, as it's quite literally anarchists who do this. It's the equivalent of revealing that they're thinking, but without government telling everyone how to freedom, how will we freedom?
There's still status.
And they're practically anarchists, and they might even be consciously anarchists, but it's sort of like there's other areas in which they're still in the box. Like,
Yep.
They got the concept, but it didn't filter through to all the areas of the brain just yet. And I understand that because I fell into that trap at the beginning too. I think it's sort of this growing process, and I think that the movement as a whole, as it were, made up of all the individuals it is, I've seen a lot of growth in the last 3 years. I've watched the conversations progress and improve and get more and more intelligent, and I've watched, sort of, it's like the separation of the wheat from the chaff kind of thing. Like you see the separating of, the people who really do get it and go, this is wait a minute, the whole point of freedom is I can't tell anyone else how to freedom. I don't know how everyone else should freedom. It's not my freaking business. And so those people are maturing, and they're maturing in their, discussions, they're maturing in their projects and their focuses and all that. And I think that's good. Ken, real quick before we move on, is there a topic you, Larken, thought of, or that you, Jeff, might have thought of that is in addition to this?
Yeah, Jeff, I'd really like to hear what your pet peeve is. I'm really interested in that.
I have one, yeah.
I don't know if I have a pet peeve per se, but you brought up some good points about left and right and stuff like that. That's one thing that's been a big issue in the sort of freedom movement, if there's such a thing, lately, has been this whole leftist versus this new alt-right thing, whatever that is. And Larken and I have talked about that on Entercast, and it's like, it makes no sense whatsoever. And to me, it's just like the whole reason this whole planet is enslaved is because whoever's in control has managed to keep us completely divided on every single thing. So it's like men versus women, it's black versus whites, it's nationalities, U.S. versus China, Russia versus China, it's religions, Christians versus Muslims. All this stuff is just meant to keep us divided, and I'm just sad that most people don't see that's the case. And as soon as people wake up to that and realize that that's what's keeping us from a world of complete peace and prosperity, true anarchy, and like a wonderful world. People don't even know what the word anarchy means, but like a wonderful world would actually happen if you would just realize that this is all done on purpose to keep us all separated. Because if we ever fully realize this as humanity, the governments, the central banks, the people who are in control of everything will have no power left. So in that sense, that's my pet peeve, is seeing the people that, the people who'd like to put this left and right on anarchists. I don't get it whatsoever. There's no left or right anarchists. There's just anarchists, and that's it. And Larken brought up the anarcho-communists, but what I hear sometimes is people going, well, yeah, you can say that about the anarcho-communists, but you're a anarcho-capitalist, so you do it too. It's like, well, all I'm saying when I use the word capitalist is free markets. So that's what anarchy is. That's totally the exact same thing as anarchy. I just used the word anarcho-capitalist because a bunch of idiot commies use the word anarchist when they're communists. So I have to make sure that people understand I'm not what they are. But there is no left or right. There's just anarchy, right, and that's it.
That's funny you say that too about the whole, anarcho-capitalist just means I'm for free markets. Because I've said to people, and anarcho-capitalism is redundant and anarcho-communism is self-contradictory. I'm all for a voluntary small situation in a commune. People can live however they want. They can have living arrangements. But the wide-scale practical implication of what communism has always meant is that a bunch of people think that eventually they can force their will on the individual who might not want to participate in the same way everyone else does. And since that functionally all throughout history has always meant somebody was forcing their will on someone else, it's never gone into something that led to human freedom. Therefore, the actual application of that is the antithesis of human freedom, because it rejects the individual's right to veto something. And then anarcho-capitalism is a redundant and an unnecessary suffix to have, because capitalism, the original definition, just meant voluntary economic exchange and voluntary transactions in an economic manner, and that's all it is. So it's like saying you're an anarcho-capitalist is like saying, I believe all interactions should be voluntary. I also believe all economic interactions should be voluntary. You don't need to say, the suffix. It's redundant, unnecessary. So
Yes.
That was a really great topic, and I thank you, Jeff, for mentioning that, because that's another thing, the whole left and right thing, anarchists falling into the left-right paradigm again. It's like, wait, didn't we come out with that? Isn't that why we're anarchists? So I want to move on to the next topic, and I think I will let Jeff start this one, which is we're all doing some major stuff this year. We all are really busy. We're actually super active anarchists doing things, leading the world towards freedom as best as we can. And we're busting ass to do it. I know I'm constantly on the go, and I'm constantly working on new things and working on something major right now. And I know that Jeff is insanely busy. I'm really thankful he took the time to come on the show. And same for Lauren. I know she's done a lot for the movement, and she's always working on something. So what I want to do is, starting with Jeff, I just want to go around and have us each talk about what our major focus is this year in more detail, so that the audience can learn what ways they might be able to help the cause or whatever we're doing, or participate and or support us, and hear why we're passionate about whatever it is we're doing this year and whatever our focuses are. So Jeff, go ahead and talk about whatever it is you're up to and what your main focuses are.
Oh man, I'm up to so much, but one of my main things that I've been doing since 2010 is the Dollar Vigilante, and I have to say that has been taking off like crazy. I'm probably one of the biggest financial people in the world right now on the internet, and a lot of it's been because of my calls on cryptocurrency. So that's been great. And of course, with Bitcoin up over $2,000, I've been covering it since it was $3 in 2011. So I've got like a huge platform there now, which I'm quite happy about. And I am blasting the government and the central banks like I've never done before. And I'm getting huge traction with it. So I'm super excited about that. I just had a bit of an epiphany this morning. I'm going to write a book based sort of how to survive the coming dollar collapse, which is right in line with the Dollar Vigilante, but it's going to have some really good insights on how we can, anyone can do it, like growing your own gardens, learning how to get healthy through your diet and stuff like that, so you don't need your Obamacare and all that kind of stuff. And I think I have a sense it's going to take off. So I'm going to try to finish that book in the next couple of weeks. I just thought of it this morning. And of course, I do Anarchast. That's still going well. And of course, Anarchapulco, which keeps growing every year. All of you guys were there this year, so you know how great it was. And it's going to be even bigger next year. And we're already well into plans for it. So, and I just see the whole sort of movement growing massively. So we could see like more than like 1,000 people next year at Anarchapulco. And so yeah, just working on all those fronts. And I really see, like, as much as I started off with a lot of negativity, I see a lot of positive things going on. People waking up. There's a conscious awakening just to a certain extent. Like I talked about how everyone's zombies and how no one knows how to think rationally or use logic. That's totally true. But for some reason, I think because they have access to the internet, they're starting to wake up a little bit. And what they're waking up to is this left-right thing is BS. And what's left standing there when they realize that is us. And we've been sitting here waiting for them for a long time. Larken's probably the longest. Well, he's the longest one on this show. Just been sitting there waiting for people to wake up. And I think it's all coming to us now. So those are the things I'm working on. I'm working literally 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, because it's go time. It's now or never. Because if things keep getting worse over the next few years, we're going to end up in a total tyrannical one world government situation with everything tracked, everything taxed, and they'll turn off your chip if you say anything that they don't like, which is all of us on the show, and we won't be able to buy anything or sell anything if it wasn't for things like Bitcoin. So it's really like we're in the final stages of an epic battle that's been going on for millennia, and it's going to come to a head in a final thing in the next few years. So it's exciting times. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I am excited as well, and I have a positive outlook, and I've noticed that a lot of people are moving in in the direction of having a positive outlook. So Jeff, just to, I know that you do a lot of sort of natural promotion off and on online anyway, but just for our audience, do you want to mention, ways that people can, support whatever work it is you're doing or get involved with, say Anarchapulco or where they go to check out the stuff related to anything you're doing, Anarchapulco, the Dollar Vigilante, your websites, what your YouTube channel, you want to mention that stuff?
Sure. Yeah. Basically, it's all on YouTube. That's the easiest way. Just look up the Dollar Vigilante on YouTube. We got the newsletter. We cover the cryptocurrencies. We're up like thousands of percent again this year. We were up 200% last year. So that's the Dollar Vigilante, dollarvigilante.com. Anarchast is the top anarchist or anarcho-capitalist podcast in the world. That's on YouTube. And of course, every year is Anarchapulco, which is just anarchapulco.com, or just if you can spell it. Hard to spell, but if you type in anything even close, you'll probably find it. So those are the three main things I'm working on.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and move it over to Larken, and Larken and I are both working on Candles in the Dark. But if he also wants to talk about the mirror, we'll go ahead and bounce back and forth what we're up to. But thanks for talking for a moment, Jeff. And Larken, go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's so many, so many of the things that can be done to sort of work around the state or undermine the state or resist the state or, anything against the state. It depends so much on how many people don't believe in political authority anymore. And so that's been my focus for ages. And I love the fact that there are like specific, practical things of what to do to, circumvent or get around or resist it. But it so much depends on how many people that's sort of been my whole focus. And that's what the mirror and Candles in the Dark are about, is getting more people to give up their statism, because, ultimately, if we have 7 billion people who gave up their statism, you don't have to do anything. Like, we won. Somewhere between here and there is the point at which no authoritarian empire can keep up with it. But so the main focus that Amanda and I have both been working on of Candles in the Dark is basically teaching people to do an in-person version of what the program The Mirror will eventually do when that's finished. So they have a lot in common, but I look out at the number of voluntarists and anarchists who totally understand the philosophy and understand the principles and can actually describe it perfectly well, but they're constantly frustrated because it seems like the rest of the world doesn't listen or can't be persuaded, so they get all frustrated and they say, it's impossible to get through to people, I give up. And the whole point of Candles in the Dark is to make use of an understanding of human psychology that's necessary if you want to change somebody's paradigm. Like, logic and evidence in most cases won't actually do it. And when people are just using logic and evidence to try to talk the rest of the world into giving up their statism, and they see it doesn't work, they just get frustrated and give up. And there are ways that actually do it. We've had 2 seminars, one in Phoenix and one in Redlands, California. In the next day or two, we'll be announcing ones for Washington State, Denver, Colorado, New Hampshire, and Eastern Pennsylvania. These events are to train people who are already voluntarists on, to put it a way I wouldn't put it in public, get through the thick skulls of statists. And by what I really mean by that is get around all the psychological obstacles that make people scared of thinking about it, even scared of hearing it. And so most, thing I ask almost every group is, does it ever seem to you like you talk and you try to explain this to them and they don't even hear you? And everybody raises their hand like, yeah, it seems like they don't hear. It's because they actually don't hear you, because there are things in their brain shutting off what you have to say and intentionally not understanding it. And if you don't know how to get past that wall, you don't get anywhere. And it doesn't matter how right you are or how rational or logical your position is. If you can't break through that wall of cognitive dissonance, you don't get anywhere. And there are ways to do it. And that's what Candles in the Dark teaches. That's what it's for.
Right, and I want to say too that it's been fun to. We did the first 2 seminars in Phoenix on May's. We did 6th and 7th, May 6th and 7th, Phoenix, and then we did 13th and 14th in Redlands, California. And it's been fun to put to the test. But Larken accidentally figured out, which is just true of human psychology in general, when you're talking to people, what he accidentally figured out from 20 years of arguing with people and doing it the wrong way a bunch of times. We get to put it to the test because the second day of Candles in the Dark, at the end, what we do is we have anarchists invite in a statist friend of theirs, and we tell them they only have to stay for 15 minutes and sort of do a discussion, but in front of the class of anarchists there. And there's no pressure on them to do anything. They don't have to prove anything. They're not there to argue and defend anything. It's not about that. There's no pressure for them to say or believe or do a single thing other than just come in and be open to a discussion that's amicable and relaxed, and let the anarchists practice what they learned in the seminar and see if they can actually get through to their statist friends. And we pay in cash the statist $50 to show up for 15 minutes, and it's been so much fun to watch, the reactions that go on and watch this actually get demonstrated. Larken gets to say, here's what I've learned. And then you get to watch it in action and go, holy crap, this is the human brain in action. This is emotions clashing with the mentality of people in psychology and indoctrination and how it looks. And this is exactly the ways to see how you're getting through and how maybe you're not getting through and you need to change your approach. And it works. And we've already had the first seminar in Phoenix. The last guy who showed up, the day it was over, his 15-minute timer was up, and I said time, and he was having so much fun, and he was so relaxed and enjoying it that he turned around and said, "No, I want to keep going." And the crowd just sort of laughed, and we all chuckled, and so it kept going, and we sort of went for a while, and Larken took over questioning him a few times on certain things and going back and forth between his anarchist friend and it was just really, really interesting to watch. Larken would ask a yes or no question, or this guy's friend who brought him into the seminar would ask a yes or no question, and he'd answer with not saying yes or no. He'd just go around the question. And if you very gently keep somebody on topic and keep them hold their feet to the fire in a certain way, but you're gentle and you're Socratic and you're relaxed and non-combative, it's amazing to watch.
Yeah, that guy who seemed the most sort of defensive and on guard coming in, obviously informed and intelligent and all that, but the most defensive, the guy who invited him told me later that day, he just sent me an email that said, "I think you're turning me into an anarchist. Call me. I have more questions." And that was
right. And then,
that was from that one discussion. And I've had emails from other people who were at the seminars already saying, we're trying just these simple little things, and suddenly the results are way different. And I say, I know.
It's amazing. We're passionate about this because we realize, holy crap, the movement's big now. Like, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of us, but we're watching how many people are like, I give up, I can't win people over. I preach 2 + 2 = 4, and they don't get it instantly. And, I'm making fun of them a little bit, but I'm making fun of myself too, because I went through the same thing. I had to figure out, wait a minute, something's wrong with my approach. Oh, wait. Me getting beat over the head with 2 + 2 = 4 didn't really work right away either. I might have caught on faster than some, but lots of people that's never going to work for. And so this is our passion this year. This is sort of our focus, but also our goal is to get enough people to these seminars that we can help financially free Larken and I just enough to keep working on the mirror full time and to fund the mirror. So it's partly our effort to fund the mirror, which is why it's important to get people to come to this. If you want to support Larken's work and the Mirror Project, and also if you want to sponsor an anarchist who wants to come to Candles in the Dark but can't afford a $115 ticket to get there, you can send the ticket amount of $115 and notify Larken that it's a sponsor ticket for another anarchist. You can donate to Candles in the Dark happening and making it a bigger event by sending your donation to Larken at larkenrose.com for PayPal, or message Larken and ask for his Bitcoin address, because that'll work as well. Larken, did you want to throw in anything before I go to Lauren and ask her to talk about what she's doing this year?
That's about it, except just to say that the mirror is an interactive visual computer, virtual reality version of the same thing. And when that's done, it gets given away for free to the whole freaking world. So that's, that way it can be having the same, using the same approach on 7 billion people at the same time, with each one having a different experience. So that's the gigantic project that.
Right, and we'll go and we'll actually, I think we'll do a segment maybe next week or the week after where we'll have you go into a lot of detail about the mirror and what it is, so people understand what amount of a project it is and how important it is that you get it done. Lauren, I'm super excited to hear about what you're into, because everything you do with fire and passion. It's one of my favorite things about you. So tell us what you're up to.
Yeah, so it's great to hear Larken talk about these projects, because I know I reached out to him last year when I was dating that military guy. Everybody remembers it because it was a huge uproar. And one of the things that people don't know is that part of the agreement that he and I had when we started dating was that he was going to talk to Larken at the next Anarchapulco. But obviously he didn't end up in Anarchapulco with me. We definitely broke out, but that's okay. He's kind of doing his own thing. As far as what it is that I'm doing, though, and this is about to get super hippie. I'm about to get really, really, really hippie right now.
You can hippie out all you want. Go
yeah,
ahead.
it's really funny because I've proven that I can talk about economics and all that other stuff, but really, truly, where my passion really lies is I really got passionate after what I call my rebirth, which is what happened to me on my last shroom trip. I woke up and realized that the world is hurting and that it's in a lot of pain, and that I have the power and ability to heal it. And that was actually why I created the Voice of Resistance and spent 3 months locked up for 12 hours a day working on that documentary. And why I am, instead of making another documentary, which will be 45 minutes, that won't even include all the things that I'm working day to day. I mean, I have a list. I'm literally sitting next to a list of what part 2 would be about, and it's not even up-to-date topics that I would be discussing. So I'm going to start a new podcast, or not new podcast, a new YouTube channel, and I pitched it every week, the Eleuthromaniac Diaries. It's going to be me just sitting down in front of a camera for a certain length of time, up to a half an hour each week, and talking about the things that I'm learning in my day-to-day life and how I think it connects to more personal freedom in my life, and kind of demonstrating how I think it might be able to help people. So it'll be everything from empathy to chi energy to planning to productivity to wu-wei to, oh God, wu-wei. I'm studying chakras right now, and I think I've gotten a lot of insight into what my meditative journey has done for me. So normally, like, meditation opens you to people, but with my study, I've noticed that it's actually closed me off to more people. I'm like really sensitive to people's energies, and I'm more uncomfortable around people, which is really weird for me. Because Amanda will attest, I'm a super open person. But meditating meditating has actually done the opposite for me. It has caused me to push certain people away and change my friend circle. Hell, the podcast is actually even a reflection of the type of people that I am attracted to now. I mean, I never reached out to Sterling before. I'd always respected Derek, but like now I just want him close. Amanda, Larken, like great energies. And so what I'll be talking about on Eleuthromaniac Diaries is chakras and how I think that it plays into what I've gotten out of my meditative state. I think I had this super open heart, and now I'm seeing that my heart chakra is too open, and it's getting dirty, and in order to clean it out, I need to accept that it needs to half close. So, like, I know that sounds really confusing, but I'm going to discuss it in deeper meaning on the show. And if you'd like to really support the show, I guess just keep watching. I don't know, share it. It really motivates me to want to keep making things when people are sharing it. I don't really need money. I mean, I'm in sales. I make really good money. I'm not really worried about money. What I need is to see that people care enough the way that they did about Objectivist Girl. And I want this to be much bigger than Objectivist Girl, because Objectivist Girl couldn't heal the world. This could. This can change the world. And I believe in this project so much it kills me. So
Awesome.
With that being said, Amanda, what are you up to now?
Well, I'm with Larken on Candles in the Dark, and I also want to throw out that because I'm the narrator for the Mirror project, that's in part because I'm a vocalist and I have been my whole life. I want to throw out that one of the things I am passionate about is art and putting more art into the movement. And Larken and I are actually working on trying to get to where we can have extra time to write music together. Larken's composed probably a couple hundred songs in his lifetime that a lot of people don't even know about. He likes to write a lot of like symphony type stuff and also musical scores and stuff like that. And I found out on accident that I had a knack for recording. I went and recorded for this guy who had a kid YouTube channel, and then he did stuff for kids related to comic book characters, like little funny rap battles. And then Larken asked me to voice the Mirror, and he said my voice was the exact kind of narration he needed and the right tonality, and he wanted a female for it. And he said, a lot of people don't have a knack for recording, but you sort of instinctively understand what someone's looking for when they describe what they need from you. So you should put yourself out there more. So I want to say that if anybody wants to support my work, or wants to invite me to do any vocal work for them recording, they can message me on Facebook or message the Dragon Anarchist at thedragonanarchist@gmail.com. You can send me an email there. And also you can support my work and Larken for through PayPal. With my PayPal, you can support Candles in the Dark in any way you want to. Label what the donation is with my email address, which is tootruthie@gmail.com. For PayPal, which is tootruthi@gmail.com. So that's it for week 3 of Schrodinger's podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it and got something from it. So, yeah!